Good morning or afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar presentation on how to cut API testing time with AI-powered automation. My name is Jamie Motherall, and I'm an API and functional testing specialist, as well as product marketing manager here at Parasoft. And on the line with us is my colleague, Ramiro Martinez. Ramiro, would you like to say hi and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm a member of the solution engineering team with a focus on functional testing. Thank you for having me today.
We're very lucky to have you today, Ramiro. Ramiro is one of our experts in our solutions for functional testing, and he also works with a lot of Parasoft's enterprise customers, helping them to solve their testing challenges. Today's presentation, it will focus on Parasoft's continuous quality testing platform's SOA test solution and how it helps teams to easily adopt, accelerate, and optimize their testing practices. Now, before we dive in, we do have just some light housekeeping. We will be showing demos today of some of Parasoft SOATest AI test generation capabilities. So we highly recommend setting your display to full screen, especially during the technical demos, to make sure you don't miss anything. If you have any questions at any point during the presentation, also feel free to put your questions into the Q&A box, and we will be reviewing them at the end of the presentation during our live Q&A segment. Now, just so you know what to expect today, we're going to start out by showing you a recorded presentation and demo. And that's in the interest of covering as much as possible in a short amount of time. Afterwards, again, we will have that live Q&A segment, so please feel free to submit your questions at any time. Now, we have a lot to cover in today's presentation and demonstrations. We're going to start with an intro into the Parasoft Continuous Quality Testing platform, and then we'll go over how one Parasoft customer, Northbridge Financial, was able to leverage Parasoft's SOA test solution to help them overcome testing challenges to meet their API testing goals. From there, we'll introduce Parasoft SOA Test and do a high-level overview of its capabilities designed to streamline and optimize functional testing. We're then going to get a little bit more granular, and we're going to dive into some technical demonstrations of SOA Test AI features. So we'll look at the AI assistant, which is leveraging agentic AI to generate API test cases. And then we'll also look at the SOA Test Smart API Test Generator, which uses Parasoft's own proprietary AI framework to convert API traffic recordings and files into full API scenario tests. We'll then start to discuss how SOA Test integrates into CI and CD pipelines, as well as how it leverages AI to optimize test executions. Then we'll do a quick wrap up and get to our live Q&A part of the presentation. Again, if you have questions at any time, feel free to pop them into that Q&A box and we'll review them at the end. Now, please keep in mind today's presentation is really just a high-level overview of some of Parasoft's SOA test capabilities. This is a very feature-rich tool that has a lot of power behind it. So if you'd like to see something more in-depth as far as a technical demonstration of SOA test, I highly recommend reaching out to us on our website. Go to parasoft.com/request-a-demo and request to see a SOA test demonstration. What will happen is one of our team members will reach on out to you to have a little discussion around exactly what your testing needs are and what your goals are, what challenges you're encountering within your test strategy, and then they'll customize a presentation so it's mapped specifically to what will be the most impactful for your team. So let's dive in. This Parasoft Continuous Quality Testing Platform is an actionable, open, and intelligent outcome-driven software testing platform that integrates software testing from code scanning, unit testing, code coverage, functional testing, API testing to UI, and even manual testing. The platform enforces software quality, reliability, safety, and security, even in strictly regulated markets. Data passes between tools to improve the efficiency of test creation and enables teams to repurpose existing test assets for expanded testing, such as load performance and security. AI and ML are used to enhance and optimize testing across the entire platform. And every aspect of the platform is designed to help you accelerate, optimize, and scale test automation across each phase of the SDLC. Next, let's take a moment to discuss how Parasoft's functional testing solutions are being used by our customers. Northbridge Financial has been a customer of Parasoft since 2021. They originally came to us while exploring tools and strategies to help empower their DevOps initiative to improve testing agility and productivity. Their application under test was fairly standard in architecture, in which they had a user interface and under the hood APIs to communicate with their backend systems, such as databases, servers, and third-party broker applications. They've determined prior to working with Parasoft that they wanted to shift their testing focus from the heavy reliance that they had on web UI testing to focus on the API layers for their test automation, as they needed to ensure their integrations were well tested and they understood the benefits of shifting left their functional validation strategy. However, as they analyzed their current API testing practices, looking for ways to optimize, they realized that they had a real challenge when it came to scaling API test automation. You see, API testing was being done using a homegrown test framework in which API tests were being written manually in C# by just some members of their dev and testing teams. However, their QA testers were diverse in regards to skill set, which meant many testers did not have the technical knowledge or experience required to engineer test scripts in C# manually. In addition to this, manually writing out these test scripts and maintaining them was very time consuming. This limited their ability to scale their API test automation, as they didn't have the right staff in place to continue to handwrite API test scripts. And the time dedication to manually create these tests was just not feasible for scaling. This is where Parasoft SOA Test came in. SOA Test offered a codeless strategy for test creation that enabled them to keep their existing staff while empowering them to rapidly create API test cases and enabled them to scale their API test automation strategy. By using Parasoft SOA Test, Northbridge Financial was able to reduce their test creation time by 60%, enabling them to rapidly scale their API test automation. They were able to increase their API coverage by 80%, ensuring critical integrations and business workflows were well tested and very reliable for their customer base. And they were able to reduce their test execution time by 90% by shifting their testing focus from the UI to the API layers. If you'd like to learn more about the Northbridge Financial experience using our tools, we will have at the end of this presentation a link to the case study that you can then download and read. Now let's take a moment to introduce Parasoft SOA Test. We like to think of SOA Test as your enterprise testing Swiss Army knife, your all-in-one solution for API, microservices, functional, and non-functional test automation. SOA Test helps teams to easily adopt or scale API testing with a scriptless approach to test creation. It supports the testing of front-end or experience APIs, middleware APIs, and back-end APIs. It also supports microservices and event-based messaging. SOA Test supports over 120 plus message formats and protocols, enabling it to support a vast and wide range of use cases and tech stacks, which is just perfect for scaling across an enterprise. And it enables teams to easily maintain their test cases when services change with its change advisor capability that will identify and bulk refactor impacted test cases. It also supports web UI testing with its record and playback features and provides users with an easy solution for end-to-end integration and even accessibility testing for WCAG related issues. SOATest supports functional as well as non-functional test methodologies, such as performance or security penetration testing, and it provides an easy and again codeless strategy to data-drive test cases. SOATest is, of course, enhanced with AI and ML capabilities to help teams to increase their testing productivity. It offers a record and replay test generation capability for front-end APIs, which we will explore in more detail shortly. It also has optional integrations to large language models such as OpenAI or Azure OpenAI, as well as various others. And this is to enable its agentic AI test generation capabilities with the SOATest AI Assistant. The AI Assistant also offers in-tool support and smart learning, helping users to streamline adoption. Our technical demonstrations today will go over the two AI-powered test generation capabilities. Now, our goal at Parasoft is always to optimize and improve test automation. Parasoft SOATest offers a couple ways to optimize. We support the gathering of code coverage for the functional testing of Java and .NET applications, even in complex distributed systems. It also includes AI-driven test impact analysis, which helps teams to optimize their test strategy and test executions to focus on application change. It also enables teams to monitor the traffic between microservices. SOATest, of course, easily integrates to CI/CD pipelines. It supports Docker and Kubernetes deployments and offers advanced reporting and analytics with its integration to Parasoft's DTP platform for centralized reporting and trends analysis. It can also integrate with requirement tracking solutions such as Jira X-Ray, and through DTP provides in-depth reporting on requirements coverage and traceability. We also enable teams to easily generate safe and secure virtual test data through data modeling. This helps teams to easily and rapidly provision test data. This data can then be leveraged in SOATest to data-drive test cases. Ramiro, is there anything you'd like to add to our introduction to Parasoft SOATest?
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. I just wanted to mention that SOATest has an extensive list of validation tools that can be used to validate responses from either the API, web UI, or even database levels.
Exactly. And again, it's all scriptless, all codeless. So it's very easy to add those and allow your team to really just focus on validating the business logic. Now, the next thing I want to talk about here is for a moment the sister solution to SOATest, which is Parasoft Virtualize. Virtualize provides teams with the ability to stabilize their test environments so that they can test their applications in isolation. With Parasoft Service Virtualization, teams can scriptlessly create virtual services or service simulations from live or recorded API traffic or from definition files. It enables teams to keep virtual services always up to date with continuous traffic recording using Parasoft's learning mode, and it provides teams with an easy way to orchestrate the test cases so that when a dependency in their environment goes down, testing is not disrupted, and automation keeps flowing by automatically switching your test cases to run against a virtual service. It supports CRUD and has high throughput for performance testing use cases. SOATest and Virtualize can be installed in the same IDE, providing a complete solution to enable continuous testing or to scale and optimize functional test automation in enterprise deployments. Now let's take a few minutes to talk about what's slowing teams down when it comes to API testing. First, the high technical skill barrier. A lot of teams rely on only a few experts to write and maintain tests, which limits who can contribute.
Exactly. If you're not comfortable with writing scripts or understanding API contracts, you're stuck waiting on someone else. That's a bottleneck we see all the time.
And then there's complex test setup between test environments, data, and dependencies. Getting everything working just to run a test can take longer than the test itself.
And if one service is down or still in development, you're blocked. That's why virtual environments and smart test data management are critical.
Exactly. And once you're up and running, test creation and maintenance, it's its own challenge. Manually building and updating tests, it really doesn't scale well.
Especially as APIs evolve, without automation or reuse, teams spend too much time chasing broken tests instead of adding value.
And another big one is poor visibility into test coverage. If you don't know what's covered and what's not, how do you know if you're ready for release?
You can't. That's traceability. Connecting tests back to requirements or changes is essential for risk-based decisions.
Exactly. And finally, slow results from tests, slow feedback. Long running suites that kill velocity, especially when you're rerunning everything instead of just what has changed.
Test impact analysis really helps here. You run fewer tests, get faster feedback, and release with confidence.
And that's how we're solving these challenges. It's about opening the door to scalable, high velocity API testing. Which brings us to our solution. Now, keep in mind, we already saw that SOATest is a very robust solution, rich with capabilities and useful features. We don't have time today to do a deep technical dive, but we do want to explore in more detail SOATest 2 AI workflows for test generation. First, we're going to examine a bottom-up approach to API testing, leveraging SOATest's agentic AI capabilities in its AI assistant. We call this a bottom-up approach simply because it's leveraging API specs like OpenAPI or Swagger files. Then we'll dig into SOATest Smart API Test Generator, which uses proprietary on-prem AI capabilities to generate API scenario tests from recorded traffic. These capabilities are designed to mitigate the challenges we just spoke of, lowering the technical barrier to API test creation, automatically automating typically manual test setup steps, and helping you to better align requirements to test cases while ensuring thorough coverage. First, let's start with the agentic AI workflow in the SOATest AI Assistant. An agentic AI workflow starts with a natural language prompt. Then the AI interprets the goals. Then it works with a specialized agent to reason through a workflow, hence agentic AI. That workflow does need to be validated by a human. And once it's been reviewed and approved, it's then executed and you have your test case. Ramiro, why don't you walk us through this in more detail as far as what it looks like for API test generation? And then from there, we'll dive into that technical demonstration.
Sure, Jamie. From an API testing perspective, things start with your service definition and a prompt describing the requirements you want to be tested. The AI adds the service definition to its context and reads your prompt to understand what kind of test you want to create. Then it starts working with specialized agents that work on both constructing the test scenarios and the test data. It presents a summary of what it wants to do, and you have an opportunity to make corrections and conversationally give it more information until it presents a plan you're happy with. And after accepting, it goes to work creating multi-step API test scenarios with test data that map back to your business requirements.
Now, that's very impressive sounding, but I think it's going to be a lot more impressive, Ramiro, if we see it in action. So I'll turn it on over to you and we can dive into the Eclipse IDE where you're going to be able to see the AI assistant, which is an embedded chat interface that'll help you generate these test cases.
Thank you, Jamie. Let's head over to SOATest so we can take a look at the AI assistant in action. So over on the right-hand side, we have the AI assistant view, which allows us to communicate with the LLM. We can ask it general technical questions, or especially useful are the SOATest and virtualized questions you can ask it. Because the documentation for SOATest and virtualized have been added to the context, it's especially helpful there. But we're going to be focusing on the test generation today. So the first step of this is we're going to need a service definition file, which we have here. This is connected to our Parasoft demo application, which is a mock rental site that we have where you can allocate assets over to locations and then utilize them for camping. And it's especially useful here because it's powered by a layer of API calls. So we have a very nice service definition file we can utilize. And we also need a prompt. We're going to take this prompt that I have for this service, and we'll break it down on what exactly requesting, and then we'll send it over to the LM. So we have the REST API, so we're specifying that, and then we have 4 different steps here. We're going to be creating a test scenario that has 2 add items to cart, a submit order, and then one that verifies the order has been placed. Along with that, we're going to be parameterizing some of this and associating with the data source that we have. So we're going to be parameterizing the region and the 2 items that are being added to the cart. So 2 of these columns are going to be the item IDs. They're going to be randomly selected between 1 and 9. 2 columns are going to be the quantities that we're going to be adding to the cart. And the last one is going to be the region where we're going to be specifying these items, and that's going to be location 1. So once we accept this, we can run this prompt, and it's going to give us a estimation of what exactly we're looking for. And if it's not right, we can always just let it know. It'll regenerate the test scenario and then give it to you to accept or not. So here we have the first suggestion it has, which is pretty good. Adds 2 items to cart, so it's 2 of the same calls. Then it has a submit order, and then the last one here is to get the order so we can do verification. And that does look correct, so I'm going to specify yes, we are happy with that. It's now going to open up a prompt for me to generate this test. We'll place it in test assets and just call this AI generated test. And we'll hit finish. So it is going to take the information from the LM and use that to generate a test case for us. So we have here AI generated test. And if we expand this, we can see all the different clients that's been added here. On the right-hand side, we also did one other thing, which is data generation. So we did specify what type of data source we're looking for, and we wanted 10 columns of that data source. So we can see here we have the 2 item IDs, and then we have the 2 quantities for our 2 different add-on to carts. And the last thing we have here is the region, which is going to be specified to location 1. If we're happy with this, we can specify yes, and once again run. And what it's going to do, it's going to add that data source for us, and it's going to parameterize our clients. All right, wonderful. So we do see on the right-hand side, we have a data source that was generated, and it has those 5 columns and 10 rows. And if we come over to the left-hand side, we do see that data source is added here. Now let's take a look at one of our clients where we can see what has been parameterized to the data source. So in our client, we'll see in our payload that we have item ID and item quantity are both parameterized to our data source. And on item test 1, we even have a JSON data bank that was added automatically for us. And this allows us to extract information from the responses and then utilize it for subsequent calls without having to interact with test cases directly ourselves. And this makes our test less brittle because we're able to work with new information from every single call that occurs. It's not hard-coded. Now let's run this test and take a look at the results. So we should see this test run 10 times for each one of our clients. So we see here 22 and then 40. So all 40, those tests ran, and that's because we have 10 rows in our data source. And if we come back over to the Parasoft demo application, we should see those orders added there. So we see here 10 new orders just recently added here, and that was from those APIs that just ran.
Thank you for that great demonstration, Ramiro. As you can see, the AI assistant really reduces a lot of the technical barriers for API test creation by allowing users to focus on the business logic under test that is expressed in the natural language prompt. With the AI assistant, test setup is easier and faster, and you're also able to generate the required test data as well as auto-parameterize your test scenarios for data-driven testing. This increases test coverage and test velocity while making it easier to correlate your requirements in the test creation process. All right, next, let's take a look at the SOATest Smart API Test Generator. We're going to look at a example of proprietary AI Parasoft has built into the SOA test solution, and how you can leverage this to generate API scenario test cases from recorded API traffic. Ramiro, I'll turn it on over to you so you can walk us through what this looks like.
Thanks, Jamie. Traditionally, when testing through the UI, you're not thinking about how the APIs work or how they're used. The UI already has all that business logic built in that is abstracting those details and orchestrating the sequence of API calls necessary to fulfill the needs of the UI workflow. But when testers need to write API tests against the system directly, they don't know that business logic that the front end was orchestrating. We capture the network traffic while exercising the UI and build a model which stateful data needs to be extracted and parameterized so that the sequence of generated API tests will faithfully execute the business logic defined by the user interface flow. So we're automatically generating API tests that perform the functions and workflows typically tested through the UI and running them without the UI in the equation.
Thanks for that breakdown, Ramiro. Now, this has a number of benefits when you think about how slow UI testing can be, both from an execution standpoint and diagnosing failure standpoint. By adopting what we call a lean UI testing practice, where business workflows can be tested at the API layer, you're ensuring that your test strategy is going to scale as the complexity of your system grows. It enables teams to more easily scale their test automation and reach that higher level of test velocity due to API tests being faster to execute, having a lower maintenance cost as APIs are more resilient to change, and because API test cases are closer to the code base, it makes it much easier to remediate any defects that are found. So, Ramiro, why don't we next do a deep dive into the demo? Let's show them what this AI powered test generation looks like in action.
Yeah, absolutely. So test generation is actually composed of two different sections. The first one is here, this Parasoft recorder, which is going to allow us to capture that traffic that we mentioned earlier. And we just started up from a simple click. And the second portion is going to be within the IDE that we see down behind this. And I'll get into that a little bit later. So let's first create a use case and capture some traffic. So now that I'm recording, if I click on sign in, that's going to generate API calls. It might grab like the categories we see here. It may gain the newest news. All of that is going to be terms of API calls that are being generated, and we're going to be capturing that. The application we're using here is Parasoft Demo App. In this application, we can reserve items and then set them to a camping site. But more importantly, this entire web page is powered through API calls. So when I click on backpacks as a category, we now have a list of backpacks that are available. That's creating API calls, add them to my cart, looking at the cart. All of that is generating API calls, and we're going to be capturing all of that. And then we can see the API test cases it creates after we're done recording. So I'm going to finish up this use case, get the location, have an invoice sent over, and submit for approval to use this campsite. What I want to do here is actually come over to my orders, and we can see I have an order created here. If we've correctly taken these API calls and created into a test scenario, we should see a new order created here when we execute this. Give this a name. If you have a work item with something like Jira, you actually can specify that here. So if you're a manual tester and you have a Jira ticket that you're handling, you can actually set the work item here. And now you have a API test case that can actually place validation on that Jira ticket, along with Azure DevOps as well. I'm going to leave this blank and just create the test scenario. I have a little pop-up that came up on a different screen that tells me my test has been created. And also, if we come over here to the left-hand side where we see SOA test, we see this new test case that was just created for me. And this is the second portion of Smart that I mentioned earlier. And this is the AI portion of it that's going through that traffic. It's looking for what data should be extracted, what data should be parameterized later into test scenarios. and making sure that we have those extractions being made for us. We can see here we have a lot of different test cases that were created here. This is because even though you may be clicking on a single action on a web page, there may be a ton of different API calls that are associated with it. Now let's take a look at what actually makes this smart. So I'm going to expand all, and we'll see here in my test 5, we have this JSON data bank. So what these data banks are doing is extracting information from my response from one of the API calls, and it's saving them as a variable that can be used later on in a subsequent test case. The reason for this is if you're not taking the portions that can be changing throughout your test scenarios between different executions of the test scenario, what you have is a very brittle test. Things like order numbers or route IDs might be changing every single time. So if you have these as static pieces of information and then you run your test a second time, there's a good chance it's going to break because information has changed from what it was before. And that's what we see here. We have the extractions. Let's take a look where this is probably being used. So if we come down to test 40, we see here I have my test 5 route ID. So we can see why this would be so difficult to do manually. If you have your extraction being done at test 5, or in this case, 35 API calls previously, it can be really hard to find where that information is associated. And doing that, by looking at the Chrome DevTools is very difficult. On the other hand, if we're using some type of parser to dig through the traffic for us and make those extractions for us, it takes a lot of that hard work out of it. Additionally, I've actually gone and made myself a smart template that's making a validation as well. So every time we see this orders call being made, we're actually going to place a validation on it to make sure that it's working correctly every single time. And let's see this actually executed now. So if we execute this and head back over to my demo app, we should see another order added here now that I've executed it. And we do. So we see the new submission has been made, and it has those items that I placed earlier. Let's jump back over to these slides over here. So to recap, from a high level, we allow users to record the traffic between a client and service, where the client is typically a UI. Then the smart generators AI builds those models and generates a stateful API test based on the model. Then we go further and allow those models to be enhanced and trained over time. For instance, if the testing team knows a specific API should always have a certain assertion, the model can be trained so that when any member of the team records a new API test scenario that concludes that API call, it will be generated with the assertion, saving the testers more time with repetitive test setup. The result is a record and replay API testing workflow that is substantially faster than UI testing, where the AI does the hard work for you. I said typically a UI here because this workflow isn't constrained to just recording traffic from a UI. We can proxy between two APIs and leverage the same workflow to generate API scenario tests too. Jamie, anything you would add here?
Yeah, Ramiro, one great aspect about this test creation strategy with the smart API test generator is that if you have existing web UI test cases, and this is really regardless of the test framework that you're using, you can easily leverage those test cases to rapidly generate API scenario tests by executing the test cases on the Chrome web browser while that SOATest Smart API test generator records and captures that API traffic. This really allows teams to very easily generate API test suites to complement their existing web UI testing. Now, next, we're going to look at how SOATest integrates into CI/CD pipelines and how it optimizes test execution while streamlining remediation.
It all starts with SOATest Desktop, where test cases are generated. From there, test cases are integrated into the CI/CD pipelines using SOATest Automation Edition, which provides a command line interface for easy integration. SOATest supports a wide range of CI/CD pipelines, but some of the most popular are Jenkins, Azure DevOps, Bamboo, and many more. From there, SOATest Test Impact Analysis kicks in. SOATest will automatically analyze what lines of code have changed and correlate those changes with the impacted test cases, enabling teams to focus their testing on the areas of the application that were most recently modified. This enables testers to focus their efforts on the areas of the application that are at most risk and most likely contain defects or bugs, instead of retesting their entire application each time a change occurs. Results are then published into Parasoft DTP platform for reporting and analytics, providing management with a centralized view of quality. Reports can also be automatically sent back to CI/CD platforms for viewing testing outcomes and gating builds.
So to recap, Parasoft empowers teams with a faster, smarter, AI-based approach to API testing. The approach to test creation requires zero scripting, helping teams to easily adopt and scale their API testing practice. SOATest also supports a wide range of message formats and protocols. And actually, in our upcoming release, we will include support for MCP, enabling you to use SOATest to test AI-infused applications. As we discussed in our Swiss Army knife overview, tests can be reused for early non-functional testing, such as performance and security, or even web accessibility testing. And SOATest offers test impact analysis to help teams optimize their test executions in CI/CD pipelines, so that they can focus their testing on application changes. It really provides a complete solution to automate and optimize functional testing across the enterprise. Now, we are almost at the Q&A portion of today's presentation. We do have some reading material that I recommend to help you dig deeper into our solutions and platform. If you'd like to learn more about Parasoft and how we support testing across the SDLC, I highly recommend our continuous quality testing platform brochure that gives a nice overview of our capabilities. I also recommend reviewing some of our case studies. There are two I highly recommend reviewing. The first being from Woodman Life. Woodman Life has been using Parasoft's platform for functional testing, including both SOATest and Virtualize. This case study really demonstrates the impact that Parasoft's continuous quality platform can have in regards to ROI in increasing the velocity of their test automation. Right there you have the QR codes as well as the URLs to both the brochure as well as that case study. Now, the second case study is the one we spoke about in today's presentation, and that's from Northbridge Financial. Here you can also find the URL and the QR code. Now, when you're considering different solutions in the market, I always recommend reviewing analyst reports, as they do a lot of the footwork for you on exploring tool capabilities. We recently participated in the 2025 GigaOM Analyst Radar Report on API Functional Automated Testing, which analyzed 14 vendor solutions for API testing and service mocking. Parasoft was selected as the leader in the report, as well as a fast mover for our innovations. You can download the full report with the QR code there. And again, this is an excellent way to just narrow down what solutions might be a good fit for your team. So a good place for you to start when you're thinking about evaluating tools. Another great way to get started is also to simply request a technical custom demo with our team. As I already mentioned before, when you're ready to dig in and learn more, go ahead and fill out our requested demo form, submit it on our website, and one of our team members will reach on out to you to gather some information about your business and testing requirements, what challenges or roadblocks you might be hitting, and what your goals are when it comes down to test velocity or your release cycles. And then from there, we'll schedule up and customize an in-depth demonstration mapped specifically to your testing needs. Now, at this point, let's dive into your live questions. All right.